Welcome, everyone. I'm Dick Deming. I'm Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center, also the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part by a grant from the Iowa Oncology Society. Our topic tonight is mindfulness, and our guest is Knapp. Keith, welcome. Keith is in the Institute for Transportation at Iowa State University. Go Cyclones. And he's also a mindfulness coach. So welcome to our show.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Before we talk about mindfulness, let's get to know you a little bit as a person. So where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Wausau, Wisconsin. I haven't lived there for about 40 years.
And how big is Wausau?
It's probably still about 30,000 people, so it's one of the bigger towns in central Wisconsin.
Yeah. And you went to high school there. What did you excel in high school? What were your favorite subjects?
Well, again, I'm an engineer now, so it was architecture and it was the tech programs essentially is what I focused on a lot. Yeah.
And how did you choose Iowa State for undergrad?
Actually, I didn't go to undergrad here. I went to the University of Wisconsin as my
All right.
Yeah.
So you went to Madison, University of Wisconsin, Madison. All right. Go Badgers, right? And did you know when you entered school that you wanted to be an engineer?
Well, I did enter civil engineering, but of course, like many people, I switched back and forth between that and business, but I ended up thinking engineer was engineering, civil engineering in this case was the thing for me, and I went back. So it took me an extra year, but I ended up where I started, civil engineering.
And then what did you do when you graduated with civil engineering at Wisconsin?
So my next stop was Cornell. I did a master's degree there. From there, I moved to Boston for a couple of years and did some consulting work out there. From there, I moved to Chicago, or just outside of Chicago, and did consulting there. And then, this is just in my 20s, I decided I wanted to get a PhD. And so I went to Texas A&M to get my PhD.
Wow. And what's your PhD in?
Civil engineering with a focus on transportation. So I do roadways and roadway safety and that kind of thing.
So when you do a PhD in civil engineering, do you have a thesis?
A dissertation, yeah.
A dissertation.
And I could go into that, but
well, maybe just give us the title. The title.
The title. Boy, we're talking a long time ago. I believe
we're not going to fact check you.
I believe it was something about the patterns of daily traffic volumes on major freeways or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, where I evaluated over 20 years of volume at many different locations throughout Texas. And that was before, major computers and things like that, where everything was done. A lot of it was done through Excel and things like that. So.
Okay. And so that was in College Station, Texas, right?
College Station, go Aggies.
Okay. And then, are you responsible for these 4-lane highways that crisscross in the middle of an intersection? Are you responsible for things like that?
When I was a consultant and a designer and things like that and a planner, I was involved with a few things that were pretty major, yes. The bypass around Mason City was one of them, actually.
Okay. And so now tell us a little bit about your professional job there at Iowa State.
Right. So I'm the director of what's called the Local Technical Assistance Program, which is a statewide program that trains people and does technical assistance for city public works people and secondary roads county staff. So it's transportation again, because that's where we get our funding, is both state and federal funding from the transportation departments. And I have a staff, and we do training around the state in a variety of subjects, and also help people put on outreach and conferences and things like that in the same area. And I've been doing that about 15 years now. And previous to that, I was at the University of Wisconsin as faculty and doing similar things.
Do you teach undergrad or graduate students, or is your entire profession now consulting more or less with city
professionals? Yeah. Transportation professionals is who I train, operators, that kind of thing. I'm an adjunct at the civil engineering department, but I haven't taught undergraduate or graduate classes for quite some time. So my focus is just on the local transportation agencies and their staff.
Okay. So let's shift to mindfulness. Now, I personally think mindfulness should be, taught at third grade on, but some people I know, and we're just getting to know each other, so I'm probably all wrong, but sometimes crises in life or some major event can lead people to stop and think about where they are, where they're going, and how they might get there. And sometimes that leads into thoughts that get you to pursue things like mindfulness. How did you happen to pursue mindfulness, not as just something that would help you, but then to become credentialed to actually teach it?
Right. Yeah, I'll try to make it a relatively short story, but for many years of my life, many decades, I was what they call the human doing versus the human being. I was constantly in productivity, constantly working, just always doing something. A little over 10 years ago, and I mentioned to you earlier that I visit Santa Fe. So I'm in the desert and I'm in a park and I'm thinking something's got to change and I can't keep going the way I'm going. And it's not about everything else. It's about how I'm interacting with everything. And that led me to, as I say, saying yes to things I normally would have said no to, and getting into yoga, mindfulness, that kind of thing. And so that's how I ended up here. Is I felt I wasn't being present with anybody, let alone anything, before, and this is how I got here. Yeah.
So it was. I'm kind of hearing you say maybe it was working on your own personal fulfillment to
Yeah.
become a human being as opposed to a human doing, to figure out more or less who you are, what makes you tick, and what you want to be when you grow up.
And my relationships with life and my relationships with everything, my relationships with my loved ones and all the people I know, and being a better manager and everything else. This is what I think mindfulness has brought me to, and being aware and you know paying attention in the present moment, right, to
Mhm.
what you're doing right now, rather than constantly doing planning or worrying or ruminating about the past. You're just there with folks as best you can.
Yeah. And we're going to get into some of the fundamentals. I'm interested in a little bit more of your personal story. Maybe tell us what you remember about the first time you either engaged in some sort of class about mindfulness or meditation. We'll talk a little bit later about distinctions, but what the first time, was it in Santa Fe? Was it where was it that you were first exposed to this concept of mindfulness?
Yeah, and it was. I came back, and like I was saying, I started opening some doors I wouldn't and would have normally not done as a civil engineer, and as the person I was. It was here in Ames at a yoga center and a mindfulness class that was being offered once a week with a group of people. Um, and yeah, we did some meditation and discussed kind of what our experiences were. And from that point forward, I was sold on it. It took me down the path that I've taken.
Okay. And then you enrolled in more formal training of mindfulness.
I tried. Well, and here's the nice thing about mindfulness: communities really can be really important. If there's a difference in in the meditation part of it, practicing on your own and with others. And so, yeah, I went from there to I took Allison Pete's class on MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction. I had already tried to do some stuff on my own, but it's totally different with the teacher. And my background, of course, is in instruction and teaching. So everything kind of led from there. I joined a couple of different groups, both online and on site here in Ames.
For those who don't know, how would you compare and contrast or distinguish mindfulness from meditation?
Right. So my certification is in mindfulness meditation teaching. And to me, meditation is one technique of mindfulness. I mean, mindfulness is being present, paying attention to the present moment on purpose, not judgmentally. Meditation is one way of helping that along. That's what I would call formal formal practice, if you will. And then there's, if you will, the informal, which is you can be mindful anywhere, and there's a number of techniques to allow that to happen. It's just a matter of remembering it and doing that. Yeah.
How would you say mindfulness practice has changed your life?
Oh boy. Yeah. As an engineer and a planner for a living, and being in a very high kind of um, high motion career, this has changed things quite a bit for me. And the interesting thing I think about it is that other people noticed it in me before I noticed it in myself, and that tends to happen where it can happen slowly. It's a practice, right? And it changes kind of how you look at things, how you interpret things. We were talking about, again, I'm having one of my family members is having some health issues today, and I was being mindful this afternoon, trying to remain present rather than, again, thinking about what could happen or what may be happening until I know whether it's happening or not. And that will happen when it happens. So while I plan for a living, the mindfulness has led me to planning just what I'm planning and then moving on to the next thing instead of kind of worst case scenario planning about everything, right? All the time. Um, it's brought me more awareness to be with people where they are. Uh, Call it active listening, more direct listening. My relationships with my siblings have changed, my parents. So for me, and this is the reason I've taken it that step further to get certified, because I saw such great benefit in it. It doesn't work for everyone, and it does take some effort.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the technique. So you are now a certified instructor. So I am your student, as are everyone who's in the live studio audience with me and everyone who's watching us live streaming. Um, Maybe give us a little, 5-10 minute beginning class number one of what is mindfulness and how can we experience it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the benefits. As you know, we have incorporated it into our cancer center, and I certainly can also share with you some, and I want to talk with you about some of the things I've experienced myself as I experience it. But let's just do a little 10-minute class here, and you have the podium, you have the floor.
Well, typically what I would do, and maybe we could do this a bit, is I would do what I would call an arriving and settling practice, which
Okay.
is just simply a breath practice. So if people are willing to kind of do that,
Okay.
just find a comfortable position, whether it's sitting or lying down. Uh,
I think I'm going to
and
remain seated.
yeah, 2 feet on the floor is always good.
Okay.
If you're in a chair, uh, close your eyes. Closing your eyes if you're comfortable with that, or just a soft gaze, 8 or 10 feet in front of you, a softening gaze, and letting everything that's happened for the day pass on, leave it behind. If you walk through a door to come into the room to where you are right now, let that go, leave it behind that door. And feeling yourself in the chair, the contact points, where your hands are, just arriving and settling right where we are, just where we are right now. Maybe taking a few intentional breaths, longer and deeper than you normally would, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Maybe doing that 2 or 3 times. One more time, in with ease. And out through the mouth. Maybe dropping those shoulders. Just feeling gravity do its thing, pulling you into that chair. And then letting your breath go back to its natural cadence, its natural rhythm. The body knows how to breathe. You've probably done it tens of thousands of times just today. Doesn't need to be manipulated. Maybe zoning in a little bit on where you feel it the most, your breath. Could be your upper lip, back of your throat, your belly, your chest. Just tracking your breath. In and out. There's really only one place your breath can live, and that we can live, and that's right here. Your body can only be in the present moment. If it's a little subtle for you, you might consider putting your hand on your heart, your chest, or your belly. It's a great way to get in touch. Breath is natural, connects us to everything, all while we're right here, right now. If you notice your mind wandering, it's perfectly acceptable, perfect, exactly how it should be. Your mind, your brain is meant to think. That awareness is mindfulness. Bring yourself back to your breath if you're able. Label it if you'd like, future or past, those thoughts. But be compassionate. The other side of mindfulness, besides awareness, is compassion. Always be compassionate towards yourself. This is not a contest. It's not a fight. Just acceptance. Maybe just a welcome back. Hey, great. You saw that. You had that awareness. Welcome back to the breath. In and out. Here and now. Treat yourself with self-compassion. Like a puppy, how you train a puppy. Welcome back. Again, the breath connects us with everything. If it's hard for you to come in touch with the breath, you can listen to the sounds around you. You can listen to my voice. Just hear my voice. Or the other sounds. Not identifying them, not trying to explain them, just hearing them. Feeling those touch points again in your chair, feet on the floor, your cushion. And then as you're able, at your own pace, coming back to what surrounds you, what's in the room, feeling your hands again, your body. back, I believe. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
We're always here.
Yeah.
So hopefully that worked for you. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe to highlight a few of the things, obviously, there's nothing mystical. There's no need to have or not have any particular theological perspective. It is, as you said, being present. And as someone wise once said, the twin thieves of happiness are regrets of yesterday and worry about tomorrow. And as you said, right here, right this moment, we have everything we need for perfect joy this moment. It's when we start thinking about who dissed us yesterday and what might happen tomorrow that we lose what we have right now. And this is a coachable thing. You don't have to study theology or memorize any mystical phrases in a foreign language. It's being here now.
And actually, the definition I like the most is it's like the art. I think it was to John
Thich Nhat
Kabat-Zinn.
Hanh. Oh.
John Kabat-Zinn said, "The art of conscious living." Right. As best we can. And I often say, even the Dalai Lama isn't mindful 24 hours a day. I can almost guarantee that. But we can have the intent, right?
Right. And as you pointed out, I mean, my understanding, I'm not a certified coach, but that it's part of the training, part of learning what to do is learning to recognize when you're not here, when your mind is wandering, because you can't bring it back if you don't recognize that the mind is wandering. So one of the coachable things is recognize when the mind is wandering. Give yourself some grace. Don't beat yourself up over it. Recognize it and bring it back. And then obviously one of the techniques you're using is, I don't know, but I think it's not possible to have an empty mind. Most of us need to focus on something. And rather than focusing on what might happen tomorrow, you focus on something in the room, like your breath or your body, or it might be to focus on an object that's in the room, or a sound you're hearing in the room, but something in the here and now.
So meditation's a technique. There's many types of meditations with different objectives. So the meditation is a relaxation technique, but it might lead to that. But the breath, the body, but you also, you can focus on emotions, you can focus on thoughts, but that awareness that you mentioned, that and you asked me a little bit about how I got into it. I remember the first time I had a very storytelling mind, right? I remember the first time I went, oh, storytelling mind, come back, right? Touch the doorknob or touch the light switch, be present, be here. And that awareness is one of the biggest parts of mindfulness, right? Is the awareness that's happening, that different kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there is an optimal duration of time per session? As you mentioned, you can do it anytime. You can do it at a stoplight. You can do it, before you make a call that's going to be a crucial conversation. You can do it in bits and pieces. But do you think that there is a duration of time or a number of weeks or months before you start to change the way you interact with the world?
I think that's different for everyone. And depending on where they are, you do just 5 or 10 minutes, the formal part, the meditation, if you'd like 5 or 10 minutes. They often say small increments many times, right? But there's also what I would call the informal mindfulness, which is, I mentioned, touching the doorknob or walking through a door and reminding yourself. I call these stealthy mindfulness, where I have a bell where my headset at work. I have a 10-minute interval timer that a bell goes off every 10 minutes. I take a couple of breaths and I come back to my chair, right? Because often I'm doing something, working, and that awareness sometimes doesn't come automatically, but sometimes it does now that, oh yeah, I'm not really sitting in this chair. I'm somewhere else, doing my thing. And so that little bell every once in a while helps. I've recommended that to people. So you can do things that, like you mentioned, at the steering, feel the steering wheel. Just feel the steering wheel. Or as they say, when you take a shower, just take a shower. Feel the water, right? That kind of thing. That's that day-to-day mindfulness type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes again with time or just remembering. I often call it forgetting and remembering. You forget, then you bring yourself back. You forget, you bring yourself back. It is a practice. They use that term because just like any other sport or muscle that you're trying to create, it can take some time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then there are, formal meditations of different traditions that might include being seated in different postures and those sorts of things. When you get trained to be a trainer, to be a teacher of mindfulness, um, do you both go through deeper personal mindfulness, and do you go through teaching techniques? There's both probably a developing your own practice more fully and understanding maybe the background, but then I would imagine you learn ways in which to transfer your knowledge to others.
Right. Yeah. And even the little short period I did tonight, I'm doing it right along with people. And sometimes, sometimes that could be me and I forget I'm even sometimes got people with me and it can go much longer than maybe they were expecting. But yeah, during the certification, it's a 2 year, the one I went through was a 2 year program and had a number of practicums. So we offer classes, we offer meditations. We being an instructor myself, kind of in the technical area,
Mm-hmm.
it was easy for me to pick up on kind of the group dynamics and that kind of thing that you need when you have different groups that are doing this kind of thing, and then just the different techniques within. And the tradition I learned in was called insight meditation, which is emotions, thoughts, body, breath, that kind of thing. Whereas other meditations, again, there are different types of meditations that have different purposes, and mindfulness can kind of come in to several of those traditions.
Um, what would you say are some of the ways in which your own mindfulness practice has changed your life? And you gave sort of some examples, but maybe more specifically and concretely, how has it changed? How do you notice you are different, and in what ways, um, since practice compared to before practice?
Yeah. So we practice, I believe we practice for when things really hit the fan kind of stuff. And so what I've noticed in my experience over the last few years with my family and things like that is I'm able to just be more present with them, be more attentive with them, attentive to what's happening. You call it emotional intelligence, whatever. There's lots of labels for a lot of this stuff. Um, to be with them where they are. Um, and that's different than trying to fix or help or whatever. It's just there to support and serve,
Mm-hmm.
is what I think has changed for me.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm picturing this as the someone observing you might say you are more calm, that you're
Yes.
more listening and not necessarily reacting with excitement, but more a thoughtful response.
And, and there are times I forget when things get overwhelming and oops, and then of course then I remember I'm remembering quicker and quicker that, oh nope, this isn't the way things work. But you're exactly right, it's not a reaction, it's a response. And so a different part of the brain, however you want to state that, but that that millisecond between something happening and the reaction or the response is trying to remember. And habits can be learned, and your brain can change, right? No matter how old you are. At least that's what I've read. You know more about that than me. But I truly believe that because my habits have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, sometimes, and it's kind of like this, right? It goes up and down. I remember and I come back. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, and if you think of other examples as we're talking, so one example I have is meeting with someone, and during the course of my workday, it's meeting with patients, and I find that I can get much more in tune with the conversation I'm having with the patients, being here now, thinking about listening, responding, not thinking about what happened in the room 10 minutes ago with the other patient, even though that might have had some emotional intensity, but I'm able to put that aside, be with the next patient. I've had to kind of change my workflow a little bit. So I have a little gizmo that my nurses can just interrupt me or speak on a gizmo that's clearly not just my cell phone ringing saying, Dr. Deming, just to remind you, your next patient is ready. Because if I weren't reminded, I would be here now with this patient until something happened. And so I need to be reminded that, okay, it's time to, you
And
know.
an example, I remember that I do some pretty big events as part of my job. 100, 500 people. That's big for us. And I remember the first time when I was doing, I'm running everywhere, doing my thing, and someone came up to me and I took that breath. Just naturally remembered my breath, just one or two, and that brought me right there in front of that particular person at that particular time, even though there were hundreds of people moving around us
Mhm.
at the exact time, and there was a lot of stuff I had to do. But yeah, it can become a habit, and it does take time.
Mhm. Yeah, I also have to during the day kind of set alarms for other meetings because I'll get involved in a phone meeting, and if
Mhm.
get this enjoyable flow that's happening with an interaction, but you don't always get the opportunity to just continue that for 3 hours. You've got to move on to something else in an hour.
And that's, for the longest time, I was trying to, I do my mindfulness on the side and then I do my job. And I went, no, 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 no. It's all part of it. It's part of my life now. So while I may do these things kind of formally outside my job, and now sometimes as part of my job, because of course, um, when you're present and you're not multitasking, you're actually more productive and all of that. So it can all be connected to the job, if you will. When my email bell goes off now, I use that as kind of a reminder too to just come back, feel yourself in your chair, right, or your feet on the ground. It's
Mhm.
incredible what that small stuff. It sounds real simple. It's not always that simple. It sounds easy, I should say. It's not always that simple.
And has there been a relationship in your life and your practice with mindfulness and with yoga? You mentioned yoga. Obviously, there's some interconnection between yoga and mindfulness, although one can have a mindfulness practice without doing the traditional yoga in your own practice. And as you have pursued other practices that make you feel better, bring more joy into your life, more contentment, what other practices have you personally found to be complementary to your mindfulness?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And it's changed over the years. At the beginning, I did many years of yoga, gentle yoga, not, exercise. I don't know. They have lots of versions of yoga now. This was very gentle yoga. Um, and what that is, of course, is also a semantic, that's the right word, semantic. practice, right? Body practice, which
Hmm.
is mindfulness is that too. So I found when I was doing yoga, I became much more familiar with my body, which is a big part of familiar and more accepting of my body. So it was easier to do body scan meditations and that kind of thing than it had been without that. Now I tend to do more longer term kind of silent. When I do vacations, even here in Iowa now, sometimes it's a week of just silence, um, and lots of meditations for me, but also walking in nature. I love nature. Nature serves us all kinds of different ways, and just feeds us so many different ways. And I do a lot of that also, walking out into the woods, and all the things that it brings us, all the benefits it brings us.
Hmm. And one can incorporate, as you've already alluded to, whether it's showering, but also mindful eating can be, a way to practice mindfulness while eating, but it can also be a technique to help individuals try not to overeat and to be more thoughtful of what they are eating. So mindful eating, obviously mindful walking. And then, as you said, you incorporate nature into all of this, and then you get this extra benefit of all of the benefits that come from being present in nature, and then the mindfulness of walking that can happen.
One step at a time, feeling your feet every time you take a step. Sometimes you might see someone walking slowly. You don't have to do it slowly. You just have to be aware of what's going on and be there. I did some of
Mhm.
that this weekend. I've done mindfulness eating, same deal. It's actually tasting the food, setting the utensil down, right, as you chew and swallow, and really tasting it and its texture and its smell and the colors and all that. Hopefully, it's really colorful, right? The
Mhm.
food, because that's a good sign usually.
Um, do you have aspirations to enhance your practice by either pursuing, you know, a teacher or other courses, or pursuing other types of meditation or mindfulness for your own benefit or for your teaching career? You're teaching in mindfulness.
Right. So one of the reasons I also got into this was because I'm near retirement, and if I'm gonna, this is what I'd like to do, kind of full time in my retirement. And I've certainly thought about taking the MBSR certification and things like that. But I have lots of teachers, is what I like to say. Anybody can be a teacher. In fact, I wrote something today that said they can even have fur. Teachers can have fur. They can be dogs and cats, and they can teach you all kinds of things if you're aware of what they're doing, what's going on. So yeah, I often take additional classes. I could get additional things on the certification that I did. There's like graduate level type things you can do. I often do things again in nature, through the various. There's all kinds of different people offering these kind of things around the world, really. And that's the one thing the internet's done that's been so great is, you know, you want to hear the Dalai Lama talk now, you can watch him talk live when he comes on, when the few times he does. But that's possible now. It wasn't before.
Mhm.
So yeah, always learning, always learning.
Um, do any negatives that come with it, and maybe some examples, and these aren't necessarily negative. Do you lose some of your spontaneousness, your loud exuberance, playfulness?
I when you're present with everything, you're present with everything, and of course, impermanence is always there, right? So what I try to do is enjoy. If you're joyful, be absolutely joyful, and just embrace it. Other things are not again as fun to be with, but oftentimes it's not about pushing it away. It's trying to kind of work with it, right, in the present moment, and that can be tough. And what I tell people is, as with your group, there's all kinds of resources to help. And again, the mindfulness isn't supposed to be a battle. I'm trying to be present, I won't be present, and it's actually going to make it worse if you start doing this. And if once you're aware of that, then you let that go, right? And you
Mhm.
be present again and go, oh, that's what's happening there. So again, it doesn't work for everybody. And
So let me interrupt for just a second, because you've said a couple of times it doesn't work for everyone. Do you think that that's true? That there are some people that are just not able to, or that and I don't mean this as a criticism, but that they need a different type of instruction, or they need some people are visual learners, some are auditory, some but you did say a couple of times that it doesn't work for everyone. Do you think fundamentally some people are just wired to not be able to understand or practice this concept?
and maybe I should be I need to be more specific in my language. I think that meditation, formal meditation, maybe doesn't work for everybody.
Mm,
I think I believe people can be mindful. There's
mhm,
probably also those situations in life where it's harder, right? And then you have to have the resources because if you think about stress, there's it doesn't always have to be bad. It can actually serve a really good purpose.
mhm,
Running, climbing a mountain, or running a, as long as it's transient and you have the resources to respond to it properly. So to me, mindfulness is a resource. So some people, like you were saying, it might just be a different. It's not that it's not for everyone. It's that there is effort that's involved and you have to work at it. And sometimes with the culture we're in, it doesn't feel like we're accomplishing a goal. I came here to relax. I'm not relaxing. And I don't understand. And that's not what mindfulness and mindfulness meditation is about. It's to be with that, right? And so you're exactly right in that. When I'm saying that, it's more of a if breath doesn't work for you, and there's certain times that it doesn't work for me, then there's other things you can do to be mindful
mhm.
and to even meditate, if you will, without focusing just on the breath. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I kind of flippantly said that a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you for clarifying. And it probably takes a lot more to think that. I mean, the concept of like sitting in a position for an hour just gives me the willies just thinking about it, as does, for many of my patients, the idea that they have to have an MRI scan tomorrow, and they know how claustrophobic that is, and just even thinking about having to do that. But mindfulness can help them get through it. Probably not 5 minutes of mindfulness training 10 minutes before they have to get in the MRI scanner, but helping, and then once you're successful once or twice with getting through it without the sedation, it just reinforces that your own ability to control your mind. And
Well, when you bring that up, I think about when I'm in the dentist chair and what I do now compared to what I did 10 years ago,
mm,
or an MRI, and when you go into the tube, and kind of what I did the last time I was in one of those, and went, okay, I'm going to focus on my breath.
mhm,
I'm just here, and
yeah. Well, let's open it up some questions. We've got a live studio audience here, so they'll get first questions. But if you're watching us live streaming right now, you can put your question into the comment section of the software you're using this evening. So first up, Poon.
Yes. How do you stay awake when you're trying to meditate? And on the flip side, if you can't sleep, what type of meditation would you recommend?
yeah. Yeah, so as I mentioned to Dr. Deming, I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and sometimes I am not completely awake when I'm sitting. And what I mean by that is, so I open my eyes. I just keep my eyes open, and that's what helps me. Because sometimes I'll close my eyes, and if I find myself, uh, if you will, falling asleep, and there are meditators that can literally sit and sleep, right? That does happen. But for me, if I open my eyes, and sometimes just for a little bit, and then come back. But yeah, it can be hard. So you want to be relaxed, but not completely relaxed. Sitting up straight, not with your back against a chair, but actually in the chair like I am now, where I don't have my back against the chair. I'm literally just sitting in this way. So that's an alert but relaxed kind of place for me. Second part was when you can't sleep, big thing for me. 3 o'clock in the morning seems to be my time. What I do a number of different practices at that time for myself. And that is sometimes it's just focusing on the breath. That's how I tend to get to sleep just at the beginning of the night now. Put my hand on my belly and just focus on my breath. And that kind of works for me. The other thing that's interesting about, from again, the practice, if you will, is I know that there are millions of people out there not sleeping too. And I say, okay, we're going to share in this experience. But you can also get up and actually do a meditation too, just a regular meditation, even at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So Keith, you talk about sleeping and you think about, the wisdom of what we were told, counting sheep. And, counting sheep is really mindfulness. I mean,
Right.
you can count your breath, or you can theoretically count anything. And I'm not sure exactly where the sheep thing came in, but the concept of counting something or saying the alphabet or doing something to keep your mind focused and stop the wandering of your mind and the perseverations about what's going to happen tomorrow. Oh my gosh, I'm not sleeping. I'm going to be so tired tomorrow. I've got an important meeting and tomorrow, and I'm going to be tired. I'm going to have bags on it. And then the next thing you know, there's
Been
no way
there,
you're going to
yeah.
get to sleep.
Or you
So
have a journal on your at the bedside stand, if you will, and you unconsciously write as quickly as you can, right? And you write it all down and let it go. So yeah, there's a number of things
good.
that can work.
Okay. Next question, Tim.
Good evening, Keith. I'm going to piggyback on that last question because I think everyone's body is basically structured on 3 different things in my mind: how much exercise you get, how much sleep you get, and what you eat, for instance. And you just touched up just now. Now, having said that, and I didn't plan this, but before I came to the seminar tonight, I had a Red Bull, right? And then we went through your process here of relaxing in my chair and trying to get relaxed. And I tell you, having the Red Bull, I felt relaxed, but my mind was heightened. I felt. I mean, I heard other people's breathing. I heard myself breathing. I felt the blood going through my veins almost. I mean, I was a super heightened condition. But do you practice with that when you instruct someone to say, maybe you should eat this, or maybe you should get more rest before you do this, or should you do something else before you go into a mindfulness state?
I don't, not being a medical person at all. I don't. I mean, there's all the stuff you mentioned though, right? Is kind of stress reduction stuff, right? Good sleep, good eat, well-being, mindfulness, all a combination of that kind of thing. But when you're talking about mindfulness, it is being with what is. And it sounds like you really were. Now, I've never had, it's interesting, I've never had a conversation about the impacts of Red Bull, so, or whatever it was you had. So, but it sounds like you were very aware of a lot of things.
But do you think that is there any experience about, for people who say they have trouble because they just fall asleep, of a little caffeine in whatever form you want to take it to enhance a mindfulness experience?
And like I said, I've never had this conversation. I don't drink coffee. I mean, I drink caffeine, but I don't drink coffee. I've never noticed the connection in myself. Of course, and when you're on retreat, when you're away from home, outside of tea, you're not drinking anything caffeinated. So yeah, I just have never had that conversation. I think you are what you wherever you happen to be, you are what you are, if you will, at that point. But certainly eating right and eating, they talk about sleeping, right? Not eating just an hour or two before you go to sleep for the same purposes, right? That physiological thing. We didn't get into that at all. I have not in the past.
Kevin?
Yes, you said you're getting ready to retire, or you will be. So you're probably at the age where a lot of people in this room are. You have these moments where all of a sudden you forgot, where's my keys, or forget a name. But I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not forgetting. It's just momentarily you've lost mindfulness. And when you come back, it's not there anymore. Have you noticed that being mindful, there's less of those moments for you?
No, I don't know that my
You still have those
memory.
moments. You still have
Again?
those moments.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, why did I come into the room? Things like that. But then I say, oh, now I'll just be present in the room. kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't think it's changed my memory. We should talk about food and memory. And
No, but
things like
I
that.
think we got at least 20 years on him, though. I think he's like early retirement.
Probably about 3 or 4 years for me before I walk out the door. Yeah.
Gary.
I have a question is that, when we were going through that exercise of doing the mindfulness, there just seems to be a lot of similarities between that and hypnotism. And the fact that, and to me, of course, in both cases, you were controlling it. Of course, a hypnotist will also, do controlling. But it seems like the hypnotist does more control to where you're trying to give, that person more control over what you're doing. I just wonder what your thoughts were about that. And I have another question is that,
Let's
through
do
this.
one. We'll come back here.
Oh, okay.
So what do you know about hypnotism?
This is a great crowd. They ask really, really, really good questions, really interesting questions, things I've never even thought of. Because I don't consider myself, I always, and usually, and probably I didn't say it today, is, hey, if it's not working for you, bail out or something like that, right? For the meditation part of it. Because that was mindful meditation is what it was, mindfulness of the breath. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I have not seen a hypnotist probably in my entire life. But I think I understand what you're talking about. But to me, this is guidance. I'm guiding someone through a practice. And if one thing isn't working for them, they should be trying another kind of thing. Like if the breath's not working, try sound, try feeling your body in the chair, that kind of thing. So, but I appreciate the insight.
And the next time you hear a ding, you will bark like a dog.
I can make a suggestion.
That's for you, Keith. When that timer goes off, the next time the timer goes off, you're gonna bark.
Maybe I should get certified in hypnotism.
You let us know what happens tomorrow when the ding goes off.
Yeah.
Gary, did you have another question?
It's interesting. You say you've never seen a hypnotist. It seems like we go to the state fair to see the hypnotist each year, and it's just quite entertaining as to what this hypnotist can do. My other question is concerning, trying to be mindful and trying to control certain aspects of your body stuff. And do you believe that this is something that really helps a body to heal when there's some particular physical things that are happening that need to be rectified?
And again, and that's a little outside of my area, but I don't think it's about controlling stuff. Mindfulness is about being present with what is and your relationship with that. Like we were talking about with responding or reacting, that's a choice, right? That hopefully mindfulness helps a bit with, and can, I think. Same thing with anxiety and stress and things like that. It's a resource that can be used to help. Now, whether that has physical health impacts, I would think it would if it's reducing stress and things like that.
Yeah. So, Keith, have you ever experienced or studied, or, I'm sure you're aware of biofeedback. Has any of your mindfulness or meditation training utilized that? So, for example, slowing your heart rate consciously by using a tool where you're watching your heart rate or you're feeling it, or your blood pressure, but using what I would call mindfulness, but it's probably also maybe relaxation techniques that incorporate some of the principles of mindfulness to actually have a physiologic effect on your body.
And again, and this is different than the mindfulness meditation. There are certain yoga, yoga nidra is all about relaxation, and that's the objective. So we're mixing a few things up here, I think. But no, I haven't had myself hooked up. Of course, I do talk to the researchers at university, or attend things at University of Wisconsin's got a center. There's a number of centers around the country now. This is what they're looking at, right? And so the research is getting better and better, in my opinion, compared to what it might have been 20 years ago. And they have hooked people up, certainly. And I know my heart rate goes down quite a bit, but exercise really helps too. So it's a combination of things. Yeah.
You did, you tied into what's the research at the University of Wisconsin, and the neuroplasticity, that we can actually change what our brain looks like. And they have famous research of doing functional MRI scans of Tibetan monks as they're meditating and actually seeing what's happening in the brain, and that this whole process can shrink the parts of the brain that cause thoughts of adversity and tension, and grow the parts of the brain that are associated with more calming features of our physiology.
And the I don't know if we want to get into telomeres. Have you seen that one too?
Yes.
The caps on our chromosomes that actually kind of maybe recover a little bit. It's about the aging process, and meditators have, it's helped their telomeres. And that was, I think that even won the Nobel Prize, if I remember right, in medicine quite a while ago now.
Yeah. So our minds, clearly this idea of mind-body separation, everything is connected. You know what?
Very
we have
powerful
time
thing.
for one more question. Is there one last question?
Keith, as a younger man, I used to drink a lot, too much, as a matter of fact. And I've often looked back on that and wondered why I did it, and tried to explain to people why I did it. Well, as a young person, a lot of times you're unhappy, and a lot of times you're bored, and you want time to pass more quickly. You want a numbing sensation to begin with. And then because alcohol is a depressant, it gets you through these slow, boring times. Well, is mindfulness actually what I should have been doing to make time pass, and also to get me through the more difficult times, as an example? And is that why meditation and mindfulness is such a good addiction treatment? Because it's the proper path, and it's a substitute that has some of the same benefits.
Well, I grew up in Wisconsin, so you're talking to a guy that probably went through the exact same experience as you. It's, I don't know if it gets to a point, like with me, it got to a point where I had to change something, and I don't drink a lot, so it was, what can I do to change my interrelationship with everything again? And this is where this led me. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question so much, because again, I'm not an addiction specialist or anything like that. I don't know. I don't think my mindfulness is an addiction. So I guess that's one good thing.
I think I'm going to give you the latitude with your profession to say that mindfulness is definitely a healthy alternative to excessive drinking. I think you can.
Okay, yeah, we can go
say
there.
that with confidence. Yes.
Yes.
You don't have to be an MD to say that. But no, but thank you, George. That was a good question, because the way that individuals use substances is somewhat to not be here now, to just sort of give yourself a reason for not doing something productive for the rest of the night, because you
and there's a number of things, like
out.
TV, you watch TV, you're just zoning out, right? So
well, we've come to the end of our hour, Keith. So I want to thank you. Our guest has been Keith Knapp. He has a PhD in civil engineering, and is a director at the Institute of Transportation at Iowa State. But he's also a certified mindfulness coach. And thank you for sharing your experience and insight with us this evening. If you are watching us this evening and know someone that would benefit by watching this program, it will be available on demand beginning tomorrow at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel and also the Mercy Cancer Center website. I hope you'll join us again next week. Thanks, everyone.